Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to meet somebody who's been around Milford, because we've seen him here, and somebody who wants to be more involved in the town of Milford. You may or may not know, we'll talk about that we've been redistricted, and we're going to have new representation. Ryan Fatman will no longer be our senator. And we have somebody who's come up and said, put me in, coach. I want to help the town of Milford and the surrounding towns. So why don't we start with an introduction?
My name is Shawn Dooley. I'm the state representative currently in the 9th Norfolk, which is Plainville, Rentham, Norfolk, Millis, Medfield, and Walpole. And I am running for the state Senate Street, which now includes, it comes all the way, starts in Needham, and it comes all the way down into Franklin, Bellingham, and then up to Milford. So it's a long 11 towns.
You know, it's funny because when Richie Neal had us
Yes.
in Washington, it felt like a banana republic. We started in Milford, went almost all the way out to Springfield.
Yep.
So this one actually feels smaller than the stretch before.
Well, it's state senate, so it's a little smaller, anyways. But it's it's nice now that it's concentrated. I live off of 495. It's mainly a 495 district now with a little offshoot up to Needham.
So it's a lot more manageable.
A lot more manageable.
Because I always never understood how Richie could cover from Springfield to here, because the needs were so different.
Completely. And that's what's nice about, they did a pretty good job in redistricting, in making, communities that were a little more similar, as opposed to, that being said, Jake Auchincloss has Brookline and Fall River.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get two communities much more different than Brookline and Fall River. So
yeah, when
it's
Jake came on, I said, how's your Portuguese? If you're going to go down to Fall Rive, you better know that language.
Yeah, he's got bom dia, obrigado.
That's good. Family.
Yes.
Seems like, if I read your website, very important to you.
Very, yeah, by far, I think, most parents out there, it's the most important thing. I'm blessed with a wonderful wife, who's an attorney and works in Boston, but is home a lot, and she's actually a selectman in our hometown, chair of the select board there. So politically active, so she at least gets what I'm doing, and makes enough money that I can be a full-time state rep, as opposed to a lot of my colleagues have other jobs and things along those lines. So I can concentrate on doing this 100% of the time. And I have 4 kids. Caroline, who's my oldest, she's 25 in the Marine Corps, graduated from the United States Naval Academy. She's stationed at Marine Air Base in Beaufort, South Carolina right now, but actually Saturday she flew out. She's doing a training exercise at 29 Palms out in California. And then I have a 17-year-old, Emma, who's a junior and wants to go to the Naval Academy. She was down there last weekend doing a candidates weekend that she got invited down for. And then I have 2 boys, Jack, who's 15, he's a hockey goalie, and William, who's 14 and wrestler and football player. So,
well, Annapolis is not the worst place to study.
No, it's very, very nice. As a dad, it was a lot of my folks live outside of D.C. My dad was career Navy. He was 30 years in the Navy as well, and so they settled outside of D.C. when he retired. And so it was nice because I would be able to go down and visit her and see my parents, and so it was a good good fit.
The only thing I didn't like about Annapolis was sailing into it, because there were so many boats.
So many.
First time I sailed in, I looked at my wife and said, "Now I know what Custer felt like." It was just unbelievable. But once you got in, it's beautiful.
Phenomenal town. It's very walkable. It's old. Old, quaint, lined streets and these nice little shops. It's a really cool town. And then you have the Academy, and Academy is one of these places that's so special. You just walk on the yard, you get goosebumps because you can feel the history.
Well, how much more could you ask for than to have 2 daughters graduate as Annapolis graduates?
I'm very proud. I'm very proud of all my kids. But yeah, no, that's a little extra special, I will admit.
You know, and I always thought the Navy was the toughest of the services, and I'll get people hating me for it, because when they have to go away for 3 months
Yep.
or 4 months at a time, that's got to be an incredible, incredible task to put on a family.
Oh yeah, I remember as a kid, my father was, he did his last command tour. He was out to sea up in the Bering Straits and did a little spy work and stuff. But he was gone. He had 2 tours, 11 months out at sea both times, and so so out of 2 years he was gone 22 months. So, which was very difficult on my mom.
Well, very difficult on the whole family.
Right. As kids, we were a little oblivious. It's you don't realize it as a kid. Looking back as an adult and having kids, you're like, wow, she was a single mom.
Essentially a single mom, except for 1 month of the year.
Right, and a single mom in a community that she didn't just move to 2 months before he goes out to sea. It's not it's not like she grew up there and has family and friends from the area. You move to Norfolk or San Diego, you're plopping down. You're a brand new mom, and you're trying to get your kids scheduled in schools with new schools,
with no support network,
no support network or friends. Yeah, so it's tough.
Now, in your spare time, on-call firefighter?
Yep, but since I've been doing that for about 12 years now. I love public service. I love giving back. It's one of the things that drives me. It's some people like gambling or other things like that. As silly as it sounds very cliche, but I just that's one of the things that really means a lot to me, and it's really fulfilling. And being a firefighter, one, it's cool. You get to spray water and kick in doors and break windows and knock down fire, and and being an EMT and being on the ambulance, you get to actually as a rep, you get to help people in a way that it's long term.
You get to save people's lives.
Yeah, I was going to say, you literally get to have an immediate impact, in the moment, in helping people. So it's a lot of fun, and the guys are, the guys and the men and the women in the fire service are just some of the best people there are in the world, especially the full-time guys. As a call guy, I mainly support. We'll go in and roll hoses and do what help throw ladders and do whatever we can to help support the full-time guys. But it's the camaraderie and everything like that. It really is special.
Now, you mentioned that you can be a full-time rep.
Yep.
I mean, the $1 million salary doesn't let everybody be a full-time rep.
Yep, that's to say it. And not that the salary is bad. It's it's $70,000, so it's not I'm not complaining about it. But
no, but it's not something that
you're not going to get rich on.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. It's not like the folks in Washington D.C. who go in and they're there for 10 years and they come out with a net worth of $25 million. I don't know how they do that on a $180,000 salary, but
Yeah, but even then, $180,000, you can live.
Right.
With 4 kids and 3 cats and 3 dogs.
Yep. Couple horses. Yep. It's
horses too.
My 17-year-old has rides horses. So no, it's fortunately my in-laws have have some acreage, so we're able to keep some horses. But just horses like a boat. You just basically throw money at it. It eats your money and poops it out, and then you have to clean up the poop too.
We lived on a boat 4 days a week just above Annapolis.
Oh, okay.
In Pasadena, Maryland Yacht Club, and that was it exactly. That was that hole that never could get filled with enough money.
Yep, exactly. You lived on a boat 4 days. Wow.
My darling bride and I spent 3 days a week in the house in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
And then 4 days a week on the boat in Pasadena, Maryland. We were single. We had a life.
Right. You can go out and...
As soon as we had a child and my dad passed away, so my mother moved in with us, all of a sudden the boat became too
but that's a little small.
No matter how big the boat is, it became small.
No, definitely. Definitely.
But that was our getaway, that
Right.
you could just go on the boat and get away from the world.
Well, sailing's so much fun. You just can, you're hooked up with nature, and you can just...
That was the thing. We bought the first boat because I was having anxiety problems, working 24/7, 7
Yep.
days a week. And my wife said, well, the only time I ever see you truly relaxed is when we're sailing, because you focus on the ribbons.
Right.
And in the Chesapeake Bay, I mean, the average depth is 12 feet, so
Right.
it didn't matter.
Right.
You know, I mean, that was the first safety lesson if you came on my boat. The average depth of the northern Chesapeake Bay is 12 feet. So if the boat sinks, just hold on to the mast. It's 54 feet off the water. You cannot go underwater if you're holding on to the mast.
That's awesome.
Now, we could go on like this. It's enjoyable, but I always start off all the political shows with a basic question.
All right.
Shawn, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
I think the main reason is I'm about the people. I mean, I hope it doesn't come off as cliche. I think one of the things we've lost in our country is politicians are too focused on headlines, and they're too focused on doing these dramatic bills, and whether it's far right or far left, and they focus more on Beacon Hill and the legislation, having these eye-catching crazy things, on whichever side, and both sides are guilty of it. And my focus has always been helping the people in the community. And I think your rep or your senator should be truly your representative up on Beacon Hill. It should be your conduit. So when you need help, whether it's helping you get your passport or your Social Security, or you're having a problem with unemployment, or just you want to have a tour of the State House, you should have that relationship, and they should be involved in your community, that you can call them up and be like, hey, Shawn, I've got this problem. Can you help me? And I think that's what how I'm different from a lot of other people. I mean, Milford's been very, very fortunate. I'm good friends with Brian Murray. I was good friends with John Fernandez. I mean, it has that history of people that are service first, true public servants, as opposed to the, in the globe every other day with, some, crazy grandiose idea where they're really focused on the community. And that's who I am. And I think that's why I've been successful, in so much that people appreciate that. And it really helps because, that's how you build relationships. And life's all about relationships. And I'm able to help more people because, it's just kind of who I am. And it's paid dividends from a lifetime of, making friends and helping people and being helped. And I think that's an important aspect of community, which I think many of our electeds are losing today, that they're so hyper-focused on whether you're on the right or on the left, or whether you agree with me or disagree with me. And we need to get back more to old-fashioned public service.
Now, I've always been very proud of the fact that I have a hard time distinguishing between a liberal Republican from Massachusetts and a conservative Democrat.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be the sharp division that we see when we watch C-SPAN about Washington.
Right.
Do you find that?
It's becoming a little more obvious. I mean, I think it's, in the past couple of years, there's been, I think the legislature is probably very similar to society. 80% of the people fit into that model. You're center, a little bit right, center, a little bit left, somewhere in that grouping. And then you have the, that 10% on each side that are on the extremes. And, and it's unfortunate that, that they get all the press because they're loud, and, it sounds more, interesting, that there's this, huge division from a media standpoint. But, fortunately in Massachusetts legislature, that's more the exception than the rule. But it has grown a little bit more over the past, I would say during, since Trump got elected president, there's definitely been more of the people that are us versus them. In the up in in the State House, they like to call themselves progressives. It's the far left part of the Democratic Party. We have a couple, substantially further right Republicans, but there's not that many of us up
I
there
was gonna
anyways.
say, is it more than 12 Republicans in total?
No, let's see. We have 3 in the Senate and 28 in the House. So,
Oh, okay, so 30.
so yeah, there exactly. So
It's not, it's
yeah,
not a
we're
plethora of choices there.
and that's one of and I think you bring up a good point that we don't have many, and that and I think that's a problem, and I think that's another reason I'm running for Senate. By having only 3% in the Senate, three people in the Senate, it makes it it's not good for democracy. It would be just as bad if it was only 3 Democrats and the Republicans had 93%. I might be having a lot more fun as a Republican, but but it's not good for democracy because you lose the ability or the need to debate and the need to negotiate. Because when you discuss and you deliberate and you make a better product, and when you don't have to do that, when the ruling party doesn't even have to care what the other side has to say because they're going to win no matter what, it has a tendency to corrupt it a little bit, and you don't make as good of laws because you're not needing to hear what the other side has to say, and so you're not even taking into other people's opinions and their viewpoints and their life experiences.
But now, as a Republican, the odds are pretty strong that you have to work across the aisle with Democrats in Massachusetts.
If you don't understand math, you're in big trouble. Like myself in the House, 30, like you said, there's 28 of us. I need 81 to pass something. So I need over 50 Democrats to be siding with me on any bill. So I have great relationships, and you're able to, I have a lot of good friends on that side of the aisle. And like I said, 90% of them we're all in it for the right reason. We might necessarily agree on how you get there, but we're all trying to get to the same point. And you have to be able to work with other people as a Republican, or you become that person that just says no to everything, which you're not doing your community any service.
But Shawn, the people on the far right scare me as much as the people on the far left.
Right, I'm right there with you.
Those extremes.
Yep.
I don't want somebody citing dogma. I'm red, so I have to say no.
Right.
Well, you're red, but you're representing Milford.
Right.
So tell me how this affects Milford.
Right. And if I'm up there, I'm not just representing the people that voted for me either. I'm representing everybody. You could be the most liberal, Democrat or the most staunch conservative. My job is to go up there and fight for you and help you. It shouldn't be, the politics shouldn't really play into it. Unfortunately, it does in this day and age, and social media and all that stuff has kind of screwed that up a little bit because people tend to look at things more black and white. And I'm hoping the pendulum swings back a little bit where we get back to, all right, let's just concentrate on Milford. Let's concentrate on Massachusetts. Let's concentrate on America.
Well, when I think of past elections in Milford, some of the hard knocks politics you hear about in Washington doesn't really work. I mean, you think of the John Fernandez, Brian Murray. When outside interests come in and start bashing them,
right?
You sit there and say, but wait a minute, I grew up with John. He was in the Heights with me.
Right.
He wasn't that bad of a guy.
Right.
I mean, do we always agree? Of course not. But he's not a bad guy. Brian, his kids went to school with my kids.
Right.
So he and Emily and you interact.
Exactly.
So, when these outside groups come in and fill my mailbox with fecal matter, I really don't respond well.
No, it was funny you said that. I had Michelle Wu, mayor of Boston, did a fundraiser for my opponent this weekend, and the blurb was this ultra far right legislature, the farthest right person in Massachusetts, and it was funny. I didn't see it first, and Charlie Baker screenshotted it and sent it to me, and he's like, "What the heck does this make me?" He goes, "If you're the farthest right person."
Oh, that was you?
That was me they were talking about.
I was going to say, is there another candidate? Or?
No, but it was, and I was like, I'm like, wow, news to me. Even a couple of the press people picked up on it. They're like, this isn't who we use. It's surprising to see them attacking Shawn in this way from the standpoint of, because the far right says I'm too far left. So, so it was pretty funny. But I got that on Saturday morning from Charlie Baker, sending me a text. And he's like, "Have you seen this?" So it was pretty funny. But unfortunately, that's politics in 2022.
Well, hopefully that's kept to a minimum.
Yeah, I hope so.
Because, what I want to see is what you believe,
Right.
what you're going to vote for that'll help Milford.
Exactly.
The rest of it, to me, is just background noise.
And-
Now, 11 towns.
Yes.
You seem to have a more homogenous grouping than somebody like Jake.
Yes.
When we laugh about Brookline versus Fall Rive, whoa, that's a big difference in needs.
Right.
What do you see as the overall description of this district?
I would say this district, I mean, like I said, Needham's a little bit more of a, more of an outsider from the standpoint of, so there's, on the northern end, it's, Needham, Dover, Sherburne up there.
Not the poorest towns.
Not the poorest towns. So I would say we're, as silly as it sounds, we're more middle America. I mean, it's a good mix of of blue collar and white collar people that are just trying to raise their families, kind of not overly involved in government. Just take care of me, but but also leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
Is kind of what I think of when I think of this area, and they don't want to be told what to do. They want to be able to live their life, and we're smart enough that we can live our life, and government can be there to help when needed, but it doesn't need to be dictating every aspect of our life. And it's very, we're not Boston. We're very different. The people that live out here because we want to have, a little more space, a little more independence, and and also be able to afford to live and raise our families. We can't necessarily afford the $1 million, $2 million, $3 million houses that you're getting as you get closer and closer into the city. But we also have a diversity in our neighborhood. It's funny because you'll hear a lot of these politicians talk about, oh well, that area is not diverse, and I'm like, we might not be as outwardly diverse as a Brockton or a Lawrence or whatever, but we have a lot of diversity from the standpoint of, I mean, obviously, a lot of Portuguese and Brazilians in Milford, but we also have, we have cops and we have firefighters and we have doctors and we have lawyers, we have teachers. We have, we truly are kind of a melting pot of socioeconomic areas, as opposed to you go into, into Brookline, you got to be worth $10 million to get an apartment there, so I mean you really lose that having that cop as a neighbor, because they can't afford to live there. And so I think that's one of the nice things about this area is that we have a lot of really cool people, and which do a ton of great things. We have small businesses and we have people that work for big corporations. We pretty much run the gamut.
It's interesting because, you think of the history of Milford.
Right.
We have always been a blue-collar, immigrant-based town.
Right.
The Irish, the Italians, then in came the Portuguese, then from the Portuguese, the Brazilians.
Yep.
Now people from Guatemala, Ecuador. It's just a total mix.
Right. And they're all coming here for a better life and to raise their family. And for whatever country they came from, the reason they're coming to America and the reason they're coming to Milford is so they can be free and they can have the opportunity to make sure their kids have a better life than they did.
And this year, thank God for the initiatives coming out of Beacon Hill, because our schools keep expanding. For 40 years, almost 40 years, we added one child per year, net.
Really?
Yeah. I used to kid around with our superintendent that in 1974, the first class graduated from the new Milford High, 222.
Okay.
And I was one of them, so I know that number. When my daughter graduated a few years back, it was 260. So whatever way you shuffle it,
Right. It stayed.
Portuguese math said 60 minus 20, 40 over 40 years.
There we
The
go.
last 3 or 4 years, we've been adding 100, 200, 250 a year, which is almost a new elementary school every year.
Right.
The school came to us when they submitted their preliminary budget to the FinCom, and I almost choked when I saw they needed an incremental $6 million. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Even if you're in Brookline, that's a lot of money.
But all of a sudden, we saw the governor's bill, Charlie's proposal,
Yep.
added $7 million to Milford.
Right.
That was a breath, I could take another breath on that one.
And hopefully we'll get a little more during our.
That would be
our budget
nice,
as well.
but I'll take the 7.
So this is the growth was just from. It's not like a special ed.
No.
Because a lot of my towns are, when you're talking to them, they're just getting hit with crazy special ed costs.
Well, no.
So I'm sure that adds to it, but.
That adds to it, and I mean, we hit, I guess, the sweet spot from the representative point of view, because what I heard, and you know better than I do, the money was going towards towns that have extraordinary special needs requests
Right.
or needs, ELL learners, and low income.
Which you have, yep. So you have all
We hit all three.
three.
Now we've gotten a lot of resentment because towns around us are getting, a little bit more. And then they hear that Milford's got $7 million more coming. But boy,
But you have the need. I mean, if you're bringing in 200 people a year.
well, when you look at our high school and you're up 40-some% free lunch.
Wow.
Yes. All of a sudden you're sitting there saying, that means that almost half our population is living on $34,000 or less.
Or less, yeah.
Our rep now, Brian Murray, brought up the fact that we're a gateway town.
Right.
I'd never heard that, but it's profound. We have a lot of the issues that gateway cities have,
Right.
but just on a smaller scale.
On a smaller scale. Yeah, it's not any different than, what the Lawrences and the Lowells are facing.
No.
Just a different scale. And so that's, it's, and that's the thing that, and that's what I love about Brian is, he gets up there and fights for Milford. And, in this, and that's the reason I want to be in the Senate. I mean, it's, I'll be honest with you. One of the reasons I was excited Milford got added into the district was because of Brian, because he's a friend and a colleague, and we work really well together. And, we'll tag team it and make sure that we do whatever it takes to, not just bring home money to Milford, but make sure that, we have the resources and we're getting the attention and, and the programs, that are available either, both at the state and at the federal level, to make sure that Milford has the opportunity to take advantage of all that. So it helps all of their citizens because, let's face it, go back to the Kennedy adage, a rising tide raises all boats. We help, the least common denominator in Milford succeed. That helps the whole town succeed.
Now, you're involved in a lot of committees.
Yep.
That I read about. One of them was the Child Support Guidelines Task Force.
Yes.
If I said it right.
You did.
What does it do?
But that's actually outside of my legislative role. That was the Chief Justice of the trial courts appointed me to be a representative on. So like when you go through a divorce, you pay child support and all that sort of stuff. So there's whole guidelines, and every couple of years they have to revise those. And so, based on my background in finance, I'm friendly with a lot of the judges. They reached out and they said, "Hey, would you be willing to sit as one of the members on this task force?" And so we basically redesigned and rewrote, all the guidelines for Massachusetts over the past couple of years.
Granted, you only tend to hear one side of every story.
Yep.
But it never seems to be equitable.
Then that's one of the things that we really did as much as we could. Not this last time, but the time before, we did ton of different changes to make things as equitable as possible. As a dad, I wanted to make sure there weren't, because and that's a lot of people I talked to, were fathers that felt it was unequitable. Massachusetts had a history of being more, favoring mothers. Didn't give shared parenting, whereas like California has a shared parenting's the norm, whereas in Massachusetts it's more like a 70-30 split is where they kind of start, and so it became an issue. So what we wanted to do was, when we were creating the guidelines, and make sure things worked accordingly, and it wasn't anyone's best interest to play the kids in a divorce. We tried to make the
No, but it
math
should be in
work
the
a lot
best
better.
interest of the kids.
Hmm?
Should be in the best
It
interest
should be in the
of
best
kids.
interest of the kids, but sometimes some of the older systems, a whole lot went to the non-working parent, and it ended up putting the working parent in such a bad position that they weren't able to provide for the kids. And so it was like and so what we really tried to do is balance it out. So
But did you focus on the
kids first?
the economic, the financial, or was
Yes,
it?
this is just economic.
Okay, so it's not access, it's,
No, this is just the child support guidelines. So this is purely money related. Whereas I've actually written other bills on shared parenting, and like one of the bills, simple one actually, the Chief Justice asked me to write it. In our laws, we had the word visitation in there,
right.
and they're like, it should be parenting time. It's not, if a father is with their child, it's the father's not visiting the child. It's parenting time. So by even having that in our laws, it made the non-custodial parent more of a second-class
An
parent. Outsider, because you're just coming to visit. You're a babysitter.
Well, I was going to ask you, because I saw that House Bill 1399 to change from parenting time. Or
From visitation to parenting time, yeah.
And I was saying, well, what does that mean? But now I get a better understanding.
It's one of these things that doesn't change the law at all, except, Chief Justice of the Probate Court, it's like, it becomes contentious, because if you're the non-custodial parent, the custodial parent be like, this is your visitation time, and you're minimizing that other parent, and that's bad for the child. It should be as co-parenting as much as possible, whenever possible, because again, the focus should be on the child. But as we know, my wife's a divorce attorney. Unfortunately, a lot of times the kids are played as pawns in divorce, and one parent is mad at the other, or they're both mad at each other, and they're not necessarily thinking clearly. And what this does, let's take off a trigger, and let's make the parents be focused more on the kids.
I can't understand when people, you grow up, you've been together, you separate, you're adults,
Right.
your life. But I could never separate from my children.
Right.
My girls are my life.
There are some pretty lousy people in the world, unfortunately, and I think you hear the horror stories. I've met with a lot of these people, in discussing this, where one parent alienates the other parent, not in the best interest of the child, not because of there's some abuse situation, just purely from a power play or a vindictive play. He cheated on me or whatever, and so that becomes, unfortunately, I think some people,
And they put the kids in the middle.
they put the kids in the middle, and it's really, really sad. But there's some people out there that just suck, and and that's the unfortunate thing. And I try not to judge, but it's one of those things that gets frustrating when you see children being used, like things like
Yeah.
that. So that was one of the reasons.
But that's outside of your job.
Right.
You were selected.
Right, and that was just some, that's what I got to do with my free time. My wife's like, "You're doing what?"
Not too terrible when you have free time and you use it to help kids.
Yeah, I think so. So
Now, I saw you got involved in the election laws.
yes, yep. I'm ranking member on election committees.
What's
Uh,
that about?
I mean, I was a town clerk prior to getting uh, elected as a state rep, so it's a bit of a passion of mine. Running elections and things along those lines. So what I've actually when I got first elected, I came in on a special, and I immediately got put on a conference committee for the election laws rewrite in 2014. So I kind of got to delve right in. But I've been uh, one of the big things I've been trying to get past. Um, this might be too inside baseball, and probably for a whole nother show, is reform how our electoral colleges votes are cast in Massachusetts. We're a winner takes all state. So if one side gets one vote than the other person, they get
No,
all the electoral votes.
what is the logic? I mean, you've got a state. I mean, Massachusetts is a little heavier blue than red.
Right.
But if somebody won 51% of the votes and somebody won 49, the other candidate won 49, the candidate with 49 gets no electoral votes.
Exactly.
How do I feel good about that?
Well, and what it does to Massachusetts, and this is my argument, because since we always go blue, the Democrats are perfectly fine with it, and I'm like, the problem is we actually hurt ourselves because we always go blue. Now, if I'm running for president as a
I'm going to
Democrat,
ignore you.
I can ignore you, and guess what? The Republican is not going to win him, so he's going to ignore him as well. So one, you don't get the people here. You don't get them for vying for votes. And when they get elected, they're not continuing to, all right, you see it all the time.
Massachusetts anything.
They don't owe Massachusetts, or they're not trying to entice Massachusetts for anything. You see places like Ohio and Pennsylvania getting all these extra federal funds, and Virginia getting additional shipyards, and or California getting a Boeing Air Force base. All of these sort of things, which are the benefit because they're trying to say, hey, listen, it's great when the Republicans are in charge because it helps the Ohio economy, and so you want to keep voting for the Republican. In Massachusetts, since we're not in play whatsoever, we don't get any advertising revenue for the campaigns. You look at just New Hampshire, which has hardly any votes. Because of their primary system, they get millions and millions of dollars in advertising, and every single candidate comes and visits. If you go to a diner, you're going to meet one or two presidential candidates every single day of the week. And so we don't get any of that. So we lose that by not having it proportional. Whereas Maine has a proportional system. So basically, it's done per congressional district. And so if one congressional district votes red and another one votes blue and another one votes blue, then all right, two of those go and one of those, and then the winner takes all takes the extra two, the senatorial electoral votes. So there's still an advantage to being the overall winner. You're getting that extra two. But I think that balances things a lot better, and it eliminates, when you look at these maps and you see this disparity, like New York State's a perfect example. You can win basically all of New York State, but if you lose New York City, you lose the entire state. That just doesn't seem right. And it doesn't seem to be good from a representative standpoint.
Well, and I'll get people to hate me for this, but when I think of what people out in the western part of Massachusetts need and value, that's very different from the southeast part of Massachusetts.
Right.
You sit there and say, wait a minute, what you have to push to help your constituents in the Berkshires is not the same as in tip of 495.
100%. And I think by having things more regional, you have better representation, and it gives you, and it gives them a better voice. If they're, if one particular section's supporting, one candidate over another, all right, that
Yeah,
matters.
now that you say that, you think about how many presidential candidates did rallies in Massachusetts?
They'll come here for fundraisers,
Yes.
but not rallies.
And why should they? They know they're going to get the votes.
Right. Or if you're a Republican, you know it doesn't matter. You could spend every single day here and
And if all 12 Republicans vote for you, great. But
exactly.
you're not going to get any votes out of any electoral
Yeah,
votes.
you're not going to win Massachusetts.
So what chance do you have of changing it?
Probably not a whole lot, just from the standpoint of it's the problem with having an 85% Democratic majority is it is in their best interest to keep it this way. They don't, there's no advantage. I don't think they're looking at the big picture from a standpoint of it would actually be better for the Democrats as well if they got to play a little hard to get. If they were a little more in play, all right,
No, but I
maybe
buy
a little
the
more
argument
love and
that,
attention.
Channel 4, Channel 5, instead of just getting some revenue because of New Hampshire
Right.
Viewers, if Massachusetts meant something in the election,
Right.
maybe we would get the rallies. And I mean, with the rallies, people eat, they sleep, we get some money out of it.
Right. And most importantly, you can show these candidates things that are important to Massachusetts. And so when they do get elected, hopefully they'll remember, like, Massachusetts needs this for their schools, or I went to Milford. I remember them. I'm going to make sure that we get these things, happening in Milford.
When I think about it, it wouldn't really tip a lot of votes either way.
When you look at a majority of the elections, it's rarely been incredibly close. So it's not going to really change things up, but it makes and it works. If we do this nationwide, it works just the same as in here as it does in Texas. There's sections of Texas that are very blue, but their votes don't really matter.
They get blended out in the red.
Exactly, because there's so much red. Texas is going to be a check mark.
But now, doesn't the whole redistricting idea come into play in this?
It does.
I mean, we were part of, I don't want to call it a banana republic when Richie Neal had us,
Right.
but there was a thin
Little hook coming
little
out.
hook coming out saying, we need Milford minorities, so we'll make Milford the farthest east we can go.
Right.
How is this redistricting really working?
I think we did a pretty good job this year. We concentrated the districts a little better. On the Senate side, they did a great job from the standpoint of before there was a lot of split towns. And so, like, in this district now, before they had part of Needham, part of Natick, part of Wellesley, part of Wayland, part of Attleboro, it just in this district alone. And now it's all 100% of the towns.
I always kid Brian Murray
Yes.
that we should trade 2 streets in Milford. Medway gave us a slim cut of one of their precincts, and now they've got 2 legislators advocating. Because Brian said you can't advocate for part of Bellingham or Medway.
Medway, yeah.
You can't advocate for just this part of Medway.
Yeah, and I did Brian kept 1 precinct in Medway, I think.
Yes.
And so now Medway has 3 reps. And I represented, in the House, I represent Walpole, 4 reps. Because they divided it up because it would have been a Republican town, so they divided it into 4 quadrants to split it up and put it onto each little piece. And so Walpole,
Walpole's got 4 people advocating for them,
plus the senator, so 5.
plus senator.
Right.
Brian does a great job, but we have 2.
2, exactly.
I kept saying, Brian, trade a street. give Medway a street. So we get 2 people.
Two people. Yeah. And it's, it's great from the standpoint of, Brian gets to just, really hyper-focus. Yeah. I'm sure he takes care of Medway as well. But Brian is focused on Milford, which is which is nice.
So now, an ugly question.
Yes.
We had Ryan Fatman.
Yes.
He and Brian worked well together.
Right.
They brought a lot of good stuff.
Right.
Replace Shawn into Ryan. What changes will we see?
Well, I'm obviously better looking, so I mean I think we've got that going for. I was gonna say, I don't. My kids are a little older, so you won't get any. If you need a baby fix, Ryan's your guy. I don't think you'll see a tremendous amount of difference from the standpoint of, we're both hyper focused on, being in the community. I like being in the community at events, working with Brian, working with the selectmen, and working with and meeting business owners in town. It's so I don't see a tremendous amount of difference. Brian and I already work great together. We're friends personally as well, which makes it a lot easier. And I think that's that'll continue. And I'll let Brian drive the narrative. I'm like, all right, Brian, you're here every single day. You live here, you breathe here. You tell me where we're going, and I'll follow your lead, and I'll be your backup, and I'll support you, and I'll fight for it on this side, and you fight for it on that side, and we'll get it done. And I think Brian and I make a really good team. And that being said, I only live 15 minutes away, so it's it makes it a lot
It's
easier.
not like you have to fly to the district.
Right, exactly. And put it this way, for every single event I have at my house, I go up to the Levas to get my antipasto. I mean, I've done that since I moved to Massachusetts in 1993, and it's my friend of mine way back when introduced me to that early on. I don't know. Do you know Dennis Sullivan? He used to be an attorney in Center
Used
Town.
to be my neighbor.
Oh, really? Okay.
We always joked because my driveway goes straight down. Dennis's goes down, and we always said, Joanne, if you hear a loud thump, that means the ice kept me from braking, and I'm in your driveway.
So Dennis is a really good friend, and I was actually his son Patrick's confirmation sponsor back in the day. So I've known them forever. So I've had that's my Milford connection back to the early '90s, and so he turned me on to Levas.
Well, the house you went to earlier today,
Yep.
when you looked up and saw my house, if you
Yep.
look to the left, that was the house that Dennis built.
That's funny. I've been there 20 times, but I was so frazzled I didn't even pay any attention. For those on the camera, my aide had put in the address to the studio, but he had put in Al's home address accidentally, and so I just plugged it into my Waze without thinking, and all of a sudden I drove up and I'm in a neighborhood, and I'm like, oh my God, where am I? I'm calling my aide. I'm like, what's the address? I'm in the wrong place.
So now, what do you think the biggest challenge would be if you become senator that covers Milford?
I think getting to know all the people, getting to know the community, really know the community, getting to know the police, the fire, the business owners, and the people. Just because it's one of the nice things about being a rep. I was already, chair of the school board, and I had already been town clerk, and I was already on the fire department. So I knew the people in the community intimately. My kids went to school with them. I mean, I had, I was coach of, the Pop Warner team and the hockey team and the soccer. I did all of the things that you did, and so moving to a bigger district, where you're not intimately involved and you don't have those family connections, I think it's just going to be work. And I think that's going to be I don't know if I would call it a challenge, but that's going to be one of the areas that I hyper focus on and concentrate on, just to get to know people in Milford. So, and more importantly, so they get to know me. So if they need something, they feel comfortable calling. I don't want to be seen as this out of town, Richie Neal guy that, I don't know him. I want him to be able to see me at, at the grocery store and come up and be like, hey, I have a question for you. Or, I had, my grandma has this need, can you help me out?
Now, one of the biggest challenges that we face, I mean, we were talking about it at the FinCom meeting, is balancing the needs of the new people into Milford with the people who built Milford.
Right.
And the term affordable housing, now I'm amazed because on the street you drove on,
Yep.
there's a house for $900,000. And I shook my head and I said, 900? You could have bought Milford when I grew up for 900. They would have thrown in Hopedale, maybe part of Mendon. What can you do to help with affordable housing?
Well, as I say, affordable housing is important, but I think one of the other things that we've become a little too hyper-focused on affordable housing. I think one of the things that we also have to worry about is workforce housing, because what's happening is, all right, we have this, oh, my phone's ringing. Sorry, my watch is ringing. We have this, rightfully so. We want to help people that have these needs, but a lot of our communities are getting priced out for, the blue collar worker. They're making over 50,000, but they sure as heck ain't going to afford a $900,000 house. The firefighters, the cops,
The people that
teachers,
you want in your town.
the teachers, the nurses. And so what I want to do, and I've proposed this bill, and when Jay Ash was Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, we were working on it together, and it's kind of stalled since then, since he left. But create a program like the affordable housing program, but for workforce housing, because I think we need to incentivize our communities to be diverse. We can't just have, $1 million houses and,
$300,000.
$300,000 houses or worse in order to qualify for 40B. We're just going to put them all into apartments. You can't have just mansions and apartments. It doesn't build a cohesive community. It becomes an us versus them situation. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to, as we go forward in the legislature, is make sure that we're doing things for the middle class as well as just the lower class.
Well, when you think about it, it becomes an us versus us, because I'm fortunate. My number one offspring lives 1.5 miles away from me. So I get to see my grandkids multiple
Every day.
times
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
week. But if you don't help them, you price them out. So it's not even
Right.
me against a foreigner,
Right.
somebody from Framingham.
Right.
It's not somebody outside of Milford. It could be our own kids that can't afford
Right.
to stay in the town they grew up in.
Right. Well, and senior citizens as well. I mean, as people are on fixed incomes. It's horrible to grow up in a town and live your whole, spend your entire life in a town, and you fight tooth and nail, and you've done all this stuff, and you built your house, and all of a sudden, as taxes keep going up and up and up, you can no longer afford to live in your own town, and we're seeing that all over the place as well, where people are having to move further west or move to Florida or move to New Hampshire because just the cost of electricity, the cost of gas, the cost of insurance, the cost of health insurance, the cost of your property taxes are so high. Or I can move to Florida and not have to deal with that, and I'm getting more bang for my buck, and they're having to leave their grandbabies, and they don't want to do that, and I know I won't want to do
And
that.
that's something that I've been very proud of, because Milford, tax-wise,
Still pretty tight.
the average house is $5,800.
Right.
That's still a lot of money.
Right.
But compared to the towns around us,
That's cheap.
it's cheap. And the services we give, I mean, this will be the 14th year of a surplus in a row. And
Well,
Really?
says something about the FinCom too.
a little bit, but it's really the department heads. And the fact that we won't use profanity at the FinCom, so words like 2.5 override and debt exclusion, those are the two most profane words I can think of.
They're not allowed.
Last year we put more than normal. We put $4.5 million towards the tax rate.
Wow.
It's not our money.
Right.
I mean, too many towns, it's like a serf and a fiefdom
Right.
that, we get 2.5% a year.
Right.
We haven't raised 2.5%, and I can't remember how long.
That's impressive.
But we've funded everything we need. We just did a school for 61 million that for 9 years we kept saying, we're putting money away because there's a school coming. School came, and it blended right into our plan, and we didn't have to use profanity. We just made it part of the budget, and off we went.
Right.
So, from that end, I'm really happy because our department heads spend as if it's their money.
Right.
Can you find the instance here or there that you could argue? Yeah.
Right.
But overall, I'm really proud of, I bring up the fact that many years ago when everybody had to cut budgets,
Right.
I was reading about towns around us that their teachers were deferring their raises.
Right.
And I kept saying, wait a minute, if I can't pay for it now, how am I going to pay double the increase at the end of the year?
Right.
The teachers' union in Milford came to us at the FinCom and said, we'll propose to forego our raise if you promise that you'll fight to keep that money in the school system so we don't lose teachers. A union did that.
Yep.
I was never so proud, and that's Milford.
Yep. I was gonna say, and I think some of the unions get a bad rap because I had the same when I was chair of the school board, 2000, I don't know, I guess 8 or 9, they had, maybe it was 2010, budget crisis, things were bad and everything like that, and we sat down with the union and we had a negotiation, and they're like, well, we want this, and this, and I'm like, show me where I can get the money, happy to give it to you.
Yep.
And we went through all the books, and I'm like, we can give you the raise or we can cut teachers. And they said, you know what? It's more important for the kids, more important, better off for everybody overall. I think they did a 0-0-1 for a 3-year contract in order to get it back on track. And when we had the money again,
You make up for
we
it.
made up for it. But they stepped up when they needed to for the kids, and and I'll never forget that.
So now, Shawn, I'm from Milford. Why
Yes, sir.
should I vote for you?
I will do everything I can to make your life better. I will always answer your phone call. I will do whatever's in my power to help you and help your neighbor and help your town. And that's all I can give you. I will always give you my best, and I will give you a straight answer. If I can't help you or if there's something out of my control, I'll tell you that too. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, first of all, thank you for stepping up
Thank you.
and offering to help Milford. And to our 6 loyal viewers, as always, I'll never ask you to vote for a specific candidate, but I'll beg you to be educated on the candidates. Pick the one that has the same values that you believe in, and then please, I'm begging you, get out and vote. So as always, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Not too long since I've been home.